Great. Good to be here this morning again. It's that time of the year that we start getting ready for next year. Our trustees and the church council put together and finalized the budget for next year, and we are so grateful for that. And so we have this time of year what we call our stewardship emphasis, which includes testimonies like what you heard from Ed, and a reminder to turn in your pledge cards and a letter that you get and all that sort of thing. And we remind one another to be good stewards of what God has given us. A steward is someone who manages somebody else's property or somebody else's financial affairs. And of course, we believe that everything we have comes from the Lord, and we are really just stewards of it. And so we, at this time of the year, remind one another of that. And we remind ourselves as a church that we are stewards of the resources that we contribute together. We exist only by the free will offering of the people. We exist and function in the way that we do only because we all participate in it financially. And we are so grateful for that. And we remind ourselves that we are stewards of that. And so we have this stewardship emphasis, and typically during that I preach once about stewardship, and so that's today. So here we are. But as I thought about it this week, there's really no need for me to preach to you about this. You all are gracious, wonderful, generous people, supportive people. And through you, the Lord has faithfully provided to continue to enable the ministry of OCC. And we experience that. I experienced that. I feel like Paul, who was writing to the Corinthians, and he was writing about a number of things, but one of the things that he wanted from them was their contribution to a gift that was going to go to the church in Jerusalem, because the church in Jerusalem was experiencing some difficulty. And so in chapter 8, he says to them, encourages them to give their gift or contribute to that, reminds them of God's love for them and what God has done for them and all of this. And then at the beginning of chapter 9, verse 1, he says, there's no need for me to write to you about this. He says, I know your eagerness to help, and have been boasting about it to the Macedonians, he says. And I feel like that. There's no need for me to preach to you about this. I know you are gracious, generous, supportive people, and I've been boasting about you. Anytime that anybody asks me about OCC or the church or the people at OCC, I say, it's just such a wonderful group of people. They're just so gracious and kind and supportive, and so we're so grateful to be a part of it and as the recipients of it. And so there's no need for me to preach to you about this, but I do so, and we have this stewardship emphasis just so that we're ready, right? The trustees and the church council are putting together the budget, and they kind of need the feedback and the commitments of people so they can adequately prepare for the year to come. And so we have this emphasis just to remind you, kind of like Paul did for his people. He said, the reason I'm writing to you is just so that you be ready. So when they come to collect the gift, so you won't have to run around and kind of try and put it together, but it'll be a gift that is generously given. And so here this morning I come just as a reminder of generosity and wisdom and trust, knowing that you all are gracious and generous and wonderful people. Because generosity is a good thing. Right? We want to be generous people. I think generosity really begins with gratitude. And gratitude and generosity are just good places, good postures from which to approach life. They lead to peace. They lead to joy. And we all know kind of the opposite of generosity. A person who is not generous, they're typically stingy, right? And we think of stingy people like this who are holding on to what they have and hoarding what they have. It's a miserable place to be. I think generosity breeds peace and joy and enables us to approach life from those postures. And then even at this time of the year, I mean, we have a word for people who are stingy, right? Particularly at this time of the year, we call them Scrooge. I know most of you think of Charles Dickens, but what comes to my mind first is Scrooge McDuck. Disney's retelling of the Christmas Carol. And we all have seen that, and Scrooge's attitude, and then he goes under this transformation through a series of visitations and comes out on the other end as a generous and wonderful and giving person. And we like that. We all want to be generous people. We applaud generosity. We love that. Here's another example of it.
Have a seat, young man. I'll be right with you. Here you go. Thank you. You got it. What can I get for you?
How much is the ice cream sundae?
50 cents?
How much is a plain dish of ice cream?
35 cents. Which one would you like?
Can I have a plain dish of ice cream, please?
35 cents. All right, be back in a second. Here you go.
Thank you.
There's just one more shot of that and it froze there. But we love that. We love that. Here's this kid who he could have bought the ice cream sundae, and instead he bought the plain dish of ice cream so he could be generous. Like that video was called "The Most Generous Boy in the World," right? And we love that. We love that, and we love his attitude, right? It's just this joyfulness. We all want to be that. We all want to be generous people. And sometimes I think we think that, well, generosity means that we have to give to everybody. And obviously, as we work to be good stewards of what God has given us, I mean, life is balance, right? We can't possibly give to everybody. I mean, what God has given us, we take care of ourselves and support our family and all of that. And we get lots of requests and people at the door and all of that. And we need wisdom to help us balance those things, right? But that doesn't mean we can't have a spirit of generosity. I think we want to have a spirit of generosity. I tend to like to buy from people that come to the door. Whoever comes to our door, Boy Scouts or Cedarburg High School Band or whatever, I want to be able to buy from those people. And I know that you guys do too. I know that you guys do too, because our daughter sold Girl Scout cookies in Fellowship Hall in the spring, and you guys bought. Thank you. And I'm embarrassed to say that some of you didn't even get your cookies. I mean, some of you, you said, I'll buy some, and we got some, but we just didn't arrange it for you to pay and us to give you the cookies. And then some of you prepaid and still didn't get your cookies. In fact, I'm hoping this is the last one. These are Pete Nikoloff's cookies. They were sitting in my office with his name on it and then in my truck for like 6 months. I was hoping he'd be here so I could give them to him, but I'll give them to his in-laws. Maybe they can share them at coffee hour or something. We'll tell you. The bag is still good in there. Ted told me afterwards, Girl Scout cookies are good on the shelf for a year at least. So, yeah. But we want to be generous people and have a spirit of generosity. Buy from those who come to us, even as we do our best to be wise about the things that we support and be good stewards of the resources that God has given us to care for our family and also support the things that we have the opportunity to support. Because I think that a spirit of generosity means we assume the best. We want to assume the best of people and of people that come to our door and the organizations that we support. And whatever we end up supporting, we're going to end up trusting somebody or something or some organization. And trust is always a risky proposition. Because nobody is perfectly trustworthy. This is all of us. None of us make exactly the right decisions all the time or the best decisions all the time. We're going to choose to trust somebody that is not perfectly trustworthy. Trust is something that has to be earned, but it's also something that has to be given. And we end up choosing to trust. And I think we want to assume the best out of people that we give to. Because we're going to either trust other people with our time or our resources or whatever, or we're going to trust ourselves. And if we're honest, we acknowledge that we're not perfectly trustworthy. We don't do the best thing or the right thing all the time with what we have. And certain people, we recognize this at times and try not to trust ourselves with some of the things we have. And some people do this to a significant degree. There's a producer and DJ and singer-songwriter out there named Moby. And he has sold 20 million records, has received awards alongside people like Madonna and John Bon Jovi and all of that. And he's been doing this for a number of years, and he just got to a point where he kind of didn't trust himself with what he had. And here's a little interview with him on the Wendy Williams Show.
When you are hired these days to DJ, you give 100% of your money to charity?
I mainly, when I perform at fundraisers.
Oh.
But basically, the thing is, like some people, I'm sure everyone here and everyone watching, if you gave them a lot of money, they do great things with it.
Yes.
I was terrible with money. Like
Okay.
I spent stupidly and it didn't make me happy. So now I live a really simple life and I just, whatever money I make, I give to charity because I was really bad at spending money.
Interesting, right? Good for him. Good for him. And so I think we want all of us to be people that live with a spirit of generosity, that are wise in what we do, that assume the best of people and choose to trust people with our resources. And, you know, as it relates to our participation together here at OCC and our contribution to that, I mean, we all have a part in it. This is the congregational way, right? We're a congregational-led church, but certainly there are people and committees that kind of bear the responsibility of stewarding the resources that we have, the trustees and the church council and the staff and all of that type of thing. I can't promise you that we are perfectly trustworthy, that all those people are perfectly trustworthy. I can't promise you that we're always going to make the best or the right decisions. I can't promise you that sometimes it won't take 6 months to get your cookies, you know? But I can promise you that we are doing our best to steward the resources that God has given us in a way that is wise, in a way that contributes to God's work here among us and in our community. We are doing our best to do what is right with the resources that this church entrusts to us as we work together. We are doing like Paul said with the resources that he had in this gift. He said, we carry the offering, which we administer in order to honor the Lord himself and to show our eagerness to help. We want to avoid any criticism of the way we administer this liberal gift. For we are taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of man. Saying we're doing our best to do that as well, taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also what is right in the eyes of all of us who participate in this. And so the reminder this morning that we develop a spirit of generosity, that we be wise in the way that we steward what God has given us, and we choose to trust the people that we contribute to, assuming the best of everybody. There's no need for me to preach about this to you. You guys are gracious, wonderful, supportive, kind, generous people. And we have every confidence, as Paul did about the Corinthians, that the Lord will continue to provide for you all, to continue to enable us to be representatives of his love to one another and to the community. So thank you all. I think Ed's last point, bullet point, was you all are great folks. Thank you. Let's pray together. Father, we're grateful this morning for your love for us. We are grateful for the moments that we are allowed to gather like this together, to be reminded that we are not alone in life and its challenges and its joys, but that you are with us, that you celebrate with us and you grieve with us. And Lord, we are grateful for the chance to live together as part of this family that is Ozaukee Congregational Church, to be part of it together. And Lord, thank you for each person here and for their part in it, for the wonderful and gracious people that they are. And I pray that you would continue to bless our efforts to encourage one another and to allow us to encourage